Hello, and welcome to the Codpast. We're here again. We're going to talk about some music stuff today. We're going to try and keep on track. I'm looking at you, Rage.
Well, I'm always sort of on track with something. There's a path to what I'm trying to talk about. Whether or not anybody else is following it is another thing altogether, but there's always somewhere going wrong in my mind. I don't know what I'm saying. I fucked up straight away. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Straight off the bat, I'm in a different astral realm to the rest of us. I'll try and stay on track. So what are we talking about this week?
This week was actually one of your suggestions. This is something that you were quite keen to talk about, but we're gonna try and discuss the impending doom of the music scene, which is quite broad, really. So I suppose before we get into the usual stuff, we should probably try and cover what you actually meant by that.
Well, I think we'll do that in the meat of the show, but I think what's interesting about the death of the UK music scene is it's been allegedly happening now for the last 30 years. So it's not a new problem. It's a problem that people have said is coming for a long time and is yet to arrive properly anyway.
Well, before we get into that, how's everyone's week been this week?
Shit.
Why has it been shit, Liam?
I've been at home for most of this week.
Oh, because of your disease.
Because I went home ill on Monday with a high temperature. I've been fine since yesterday, but I'm still having to self-isolate while awaiting a COVID test result, which I know that I don't have.
What, the result or COVID?
I know that I don't have COVID.
Wow.
So it's annoying because I've got to wait for the test result to come back saying that I don't have COVID before I can actually go out to work again. So this is brilliant.
Do you,
it is
do you know
frustrating.
when you're going to get those results then?
Absolutely no fucking clue.
Well,
Brilliant.
I've got an update in that where I've had some steroid injections in my shoulder, the ongoing saga of my wrecked shoulder. I'm now in the at-risk group for COVID-19 because apparently having steroids suppresses your immune system. So therefore, I can't go into the office either, which is really, really terrible. And I also, having to limit my social contact. But I have had my mate Keir Starmer over today after he did PMQs and he came over just to hang out with me. We tried a game of Ludo, but he's a bit...
You play a few rounds of Ludo?
Well, we tried, but he's apprehensive. He doesn't like to roll dice. He's got a thing about it. So we just sat there and looked at a board.
He's not a fan.
We just sat there and looked at a board for 3 hours and he went home. But it was nice that he showed some care and some effort, old Keir. He's all right.
There's a bit of solidarity there, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, there certainly is. Not just the song.
You been listening to any new music this week?
I mean, I've been buying some new music. I bought today actually. It was the band Tier were doing a box set of all 8 of their albums for I think it was €80, which is how much is that in pounds? About 75 quid, something like that.
Who was that?
Tier. Doing it.
There's no need to cry about it.
Fuck's sake, I walked into that one, didn't I? Oh, for fuck's sake. But yeah, so that's what I've got. I had a new album arrive on Monday, I think it was. Yeah, it was on Monday, which was a German blackened death metal band called KaineKast. Yeah, that's alright. That's how you pronounce it.
Did you have to look that one up?
No, I didn't have to look that one up. I can't be bothered to reach behind me for the CD, so I tried to remember it. But it's really cool stuff because it's like sort of mainly black metal, but there's certainly a lot of death influences. Yeah. With the lyrical theme is all about World War One, and from the perspective of like. It's all in German, and it's from the perspective like soldiers, and it's using like actual diary entries, and I think a couple of actual audio samples as well from that time.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's a really good album. I'm glad I've got it. So I was listening to that yesterday. But yeah, so that's my new music for the week.
I must admit, I've not really been listening to much in the way of new music, but I have had the new Twisted Illusion single on a couple of times. They obviously managed to break into the mainstream news this week.
They
had
have.
a lovely little
Yeah, they have.
article written about them in the Classic Rock magazine. So, well done, guys.
Yep, well done.
You shall be in the magazine.
Apart from you, Saxon.
Yeah, well, I was trying not to mention him because they've just broken into the mainstream. If you mention he's involved, that's game over at that stage, isn't it?
Oh, that's true.
I've been listening to their CD, but this week I've been on a bit of a thrash thing for whatever reason. Well, I say thrash because I've listened to some death, but I've listened to things like Creator, Destruction, Anthrax, that type of stuff.
So yeah.
Yeah, I just felt like listening to fast riffs. That's what I've been really listening to this week. I also bought. I took the punt and bought the Venom albums that have just been reprinted on CD that haven't been available.
I sadly couldn't get those. Yeah, I sadly couldn't get the box set anyway.
They're selling them as individuals, so I took, because obviously I've wanted these for years anyway. So I took the punt and bought Primeval and Temples of Ice and all the other stuff.
Did you buy all of them, or was it just Primeval and
I
the one
I bought all of them.
You really liked?
Because
you bought all of them
because I've wanted them for years, and sort of to complete my Venom CD collection anyway. I just thought, fuck it, I'll take a punt on those, and I do like the albums anyway, so I got those. So that's really been my musical intake. I'm trying to think if I've listened to anything else. I think that's about it. Heavy.
Shall we have a look at some of the comments from last week?
Oh, we have comments, do we?
Yes. David Green was pretty happy with last week's show. He said that, in his opinion, it was the most interesting one so far, apart from the film bullshit, which I'm assuming means that he completely disagrees with your opinion on films, and that he thinks that Birdemic is a masterpiece.
He must do. He must think that Birdemic, The Room, and whatever else I said was terrible are good films. And I'm sorry, David, I didn't mean to upset you. If you want to sort of
I'm sure
enjoy
he
those
probably
films,
puts it right up there with the YouTube cut of Bicentennial Man.
Well, that thing. I mean, I watched. Was it the Oscars or the BAFTAs or whatever's happening at the moment? Not one mention of that.
No.
I know it's an American production, but not one mention. I didn't see anything. They talk about
got a nod, at the very least.
It should. It's influenced so much. I'd say influenced probably 99% of everything that was on the BAFTAs, because it's a steaming pile of shit. So
well, cinema's never been the same since.
No, all beforehand, my ad.
Bicentennial Man changed cinema.
During as well. During the film.
We've had another comment from who seems to be our new biggest fan on the Codpast. Jasmine's chimed in with, cool podcast, very cool, love you guys, rock as always, very awesome interview segment, very nice and cute moments ever, awesome, I loved it a very lot, awesome, love you guys, kick ass, love you guys. So thank you, Jasmine, that was lovely.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed with Jasmine, she's got to be one of the quickest minds in the history of humanity, in the sense that whenever I post a video, within 10 seconds of the video going up, there's a comment about the content.
She's absolutely on it.
So she's able to listen to an hour's worth of podcast in 10 seconds and comment, as with the rehearsal videos as well. She's able to watch the entirety of those. I think they're 40 minutes long in probably less than a minute. So, that's a fast person.
Yeah. We've also had a couple of, speaking of the rehearsal footage, we've had some pretty good feedback on that as well. Phil Mundy's got in touch, and he said he's really enjoyed seeing the songs grow each week because it makes him feel like part of the process. And then David Green's chimed in on that, saying that it's a welcome substitute to seeing them trialled live, like he did with Crisis and Reforge.
Yeah, it's been, if you want to see the us writing and playing the songs, it's been the only way you can do so, whereas before we would play them live and kind of iron out the kinks while we were playing on stage, which is still a better way of doing it, because one of the things you can't account for in a rehearsal room is when the fucking lights go off, can you actually play the riff? But there we are. Maybe we should practice in the dark next week, but I'm glad that people have been sort of enjoying it, and it has been fun to kind of put those up.
It's been a lot of fun,
I think
being
in the last couple of weeks.
Well. Just recording it.
Yeah, I think the last
good idea of what it's sounding like.
you have the idea because you're hearing the mistakes as well as the ones I decided to put up. But I think the last couple of episodes have been really good because they have shown quite a bit of progress over the start of it. Certainly with the singing and playing aspects. I'm almost there with a couple of them now. So that's good. And obviously we're working on a brand new song as well, which has come out of thin air, which we're rather enjoying, which seems to be quite a good one.
The videos give fans a really good opportunity to see just how Kaine work and how you guys write your music as well. On a separate note, David Green's also said that Isaac sounds great when I stand on his side, so maybe I need to make sure that I'm on Isaac's side going forwards.
Well, he does have a monster of a bass tone going at the moment, although he
really does.
He had a different amp on Sunday where he's trying different things out, but yeah, he's got a one hell of a tone going on. He's a great bass player anyway, so when you can really hear him, you can hear how good he is. So I'm glad people have got that insight into him. We won't be doing an And Justice for All mix on the next album, so you'll definitely hear Isaac's bass playing.
And of course, we've got another comment from the Metal Mag, just saying, "Cool guys."
Cheers, Metal Mag. We love you too, bro. Is there any more comments?
We've got another one from Jasmine. It's quite long.
Oh, have we now?
Basically saying that we've done a great job in the rehearsals. So, thanks, Jasmine.
We won her heart.
Was that Toby or the rest of us?
It says, you definitely got what it takes to win it, guys. Well done. You definitely won my heart. You rock out there, baby. Love you.
Good God.
Right, I think on that note, we should probably start talking about... actually, no, before we get into the meat of it, before we dive in, there's a couple more dates that have been added to the Kaine schedule this year.
Yeah, I've been really busy trying to find gigs, and there's yet more to come, so... for those who have missed it, so we're now heading up to the northwest. We're going to Blackpool for the first time at the Leighton Institute. I don't know what that's like. I've never played there before. I've never even been to Blackpool before, I don't think, so that'll be an interesting...
I've been to Blackpool once when I was like 6. So
see, I used to live next to a beach, so there wasn't really that much point in me travelling all that way for a different beach.
Yeah, you could have enjoyed a new beach on another coastline that wasn't Norfolk.
I don't know what I think of that.
No, only the North Sea for you, isn't it?
Yeah,
You've got to breathe it in
get in the
sun.
sea.
Anyway, yeah, there's obviously the Queen's Hall in Nuneaton, which we've played a couple of times in the past. The lineup, which was myself, Dan, Josh, and Oren, played it for a Metal of the Masses, I think, back in, I want to say 2011. So that's a while ago. So that's 10 years ago. We didn't win. There's quite a funny story about that because the whole thing was a nightmare. But not only were we weren't that good, so I'm not saying there was anything other than that, but this is where Dan had left his bass on top of his car and then got into it to drove away and the bass fell off, and then he picked the bass up, put it in the back of his car, took it to the gig, and then it didn't work. So
I wonder why it didn't work.
5 seconds before stage time, anyone who's played the Queen's Hall knows there's this backstage area and this fucking long hallway to the actual stage. And he's in the hallway going, I'm not getting anything out of this. So he had to borrow a Warlock bass from one of the death metal bands on the same day. Right. And we went on stage. We played the show. There was about 3 people in there. We stayed for most of the day, actually. It was fun. So we did the set. Dan broke a string on the bass that he'd borrowed, so that was even more awkward.
Oh God!
Because I think the strings, because it was a death metal player, the strings were wound tighter. Right. I think.
Yeah. Probably. I don't know.
Well, as he tuned up to E, anyway, they became tight, and that's why it snapped. I think that's what had happened there. So we played that. We were pretty shocking. Anyway, we weren't great, and. Yeah, all I can remember is there was a band who were called Frozen Theory. They were a metalcore band, but they couldn't spell their own name, so it was Forzen Theory. And they played the gig, left immediately as you would with the 2 or 3 girlfriends who had attended, and then their next contribution to the gig was to go onto the event page and say, "Did we win?" Obviously, they didn't. I think someone like Mage
Right.
won or something at the end. If anyone knows Mage from sort of Leicester scene. And then we played maybe 2 years later, I want to say 2013, we played as a guest band for A Metal to the Masses. We weren't in the actual competition. I think I mentioned this on
That
the podcast
seems to be the
before.
best way to do it, perform but as a special guest, because you don't really want to be directly involved with that silly rivalry.
No, but I think what had happened is a band had dropped out or whatever else, and they were like, what band can play at this short
Who's
notice?
available?
It was us.
I better ask Rage.
We were much better this time because it was the Waystone lineup. We were a much more rounded band at that stage, so we had a bit more experience as a group, and we've been together a year or so with that lineup at that point. So that was a slightly better gig. But I think I've mentioned this in the podcast before. This is the one where there was a number of metal bands on, and one of which was a metalcore band that did bring probably 90% of the people there. It was reasonably full, this one, compared to the previous one, and a band of 12-year-olds who had applied won, but they didn't bring the audience. They were a judge decision or something,
Right.
and the end result of that was all kinds of accusations on the internet that they'd bought it, their manager had fixed it, just an absolute shit show afterwards. So I'm very thankful. I think Mage might have won that one as well. I can't remember. Mage are very popular in the Midlands for those who know sort of Midlands doom metal. So I think they won that one as well, if I recall. But I'm also thinking back a number of years now, so I may be wrong. So yeah, that was our last trip to Nuneaton. So a good decade between our first gig there and then 8 or 9 years since the follow-up gig. So that'd be nice to go there. We've obviously going to Newcastle. Haven't played there since 2015 rather. Was it 2014? 2014. But we never played Trillions before. Leah's Red Line, as we mentioned, we played with Twisted Illusion there back in 2019.
That was an interesting gig.
That was a good.
That was very interesting.
Good sound on stage though. That's what I remember about that. It was very easy to play because just the sound on the stage was
Very
incredible.
interesting choice in playlist in between.
Well, I think we
acts.
played better at that one.
I think, you know what, I'm glad that you said that actually, Rage, because I think we played better at that gig than we had at the Arts Centre previously as well.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the tightest that we've ever been at a gig,
Yeah,
was at that venue.
yeah. I think it's the stage sound was just so good. So you could
It was awesome.
You could hear
You
whatever.
could hear everything.
Yeah, so that made all the difference. So that's kind of the gig update. There's more coming. I need to speak to more promoters. I want to try and get the length of the breadth of the country. I know there's people in Scotland wanting to see us. That's a bit more difficult because of the cost involved, but we'll see what we can do. But if you want to see us in a place like Scotland or even like Wales or Ireland or wherever else we can get to, ask a festival, nag them, say, look, we want Kaine, because that's the easiest way, because that guarantees there'll be people at it when we turn up, so it makes it a more viable option for us. So just nag where you want to see us. Just nag your local medium to big size festival. You never know, we might get added on last minute. I hear something called downloads going on this year, so I might give that a punt.
Oh, it looks like next week we'll probably have to do another sort of full breakdown of the dates and stuff then. If there's more being added, then we're probably going to have enough to justify going through every single one of them again.
Yeah, we're playing Southend. I can't say which one that is yet, but we're also playing Southend coming up, and that's the first time for this band. We've never played Southend before, even though it's in Essex. Well, on the peripheries of it, in the sense that do people in Essex really count Southend as being in Essex? But some people still do.
Were you meant to be on that gig that
I
Danny Mesmer was going to put on and then cancelled in Southend?
I have no idea.
It was probably a couple of years ago now, but he was meant to be putting something on, but he got let down by the venue or something.
No, I don't remember anything to do with that, but he may have asked me. I can't remember. It's a number of years ago, so yeah, no, but we've never.
It was either the venue let him down or he had people pull out at the last minute. I can't remember which one it was, but he was meant to be sorting something and wasn't able to.
I tell a lie. We have actually played Southend before, and the reason why I've just remembered this is because there's a story attached to it. Where when it was us, Osmin Guillotine, and a band called the Invisible Monsters, who were from Ipswich, who were quite a good sort of stoner doomy type band, and I can't remember who else was on the bill, but there was those types of bands, us, Osmin Guillotine, them, and maybe one other. And as we arrived at the venue, it sort of kind of like a sports pub type vibe. Anyway, they've got a venue area upstairs, which you probably have like a wedding reception at type of thing. So they don't do gigs there. So as we're going up the stairs, which is lugging the gear up and we other stuff, there's a trail of blood, like the stains that have just been full, where somebody's obviously got punched in the face and they've walked down the stairs. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going good. The promoter chewed out Osmium for being late to the sound check, and they're like, well, we don't give a fuck about the sound check anyway. But he was quite anal about getting the sound check absolutely spot on. It all sounded terrible. The stage sound, the venue sound, it was a terrible venue. And we played, obviously there was maybe 3 people in the whole thing. So not a fruitful gig. I can't remember much else about it. It was definitely the Waystone lineup that played it. And it was I'm not sure which Osmium lineup it was. I think it was the original, not quite the original, but the original that most people know, which was Elijah, James, Lance, and Pete. I think they were the ones who played that. So yeah, it was not a great experience. It was called like Club Evolution or something like that, but it was actually in a pub upstairs in sort of function room. So I told a lie there. I have played Southend before,
but you've not played at a proper dedicated music venue.
No, there was we tried to get booked there back in the day at Chinnery's, which is the known venue, and whoever was running the gigs there at the time said, no guys with long hair, we don't want metalheads because we're a indie or whatever, emo or whatever the fuck was going on at the time venue, so they didn't want to book us because we didn't have fringes, we had centre partings or some bullshit like that. Yeah,
fine.
That's the type of shit we had to deal with when we started the band. People, talk about how hard it is now, but back then it was just like, oh, you didn't look right, the venue wouldn't have you.
That's ridiculous.
It was pathetic.
Now,
well, it is because that's where you saw. Well, it is because that's where you saw Exodus, like a couple of years later, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, no metalheads.
Yeah, I've got a fun story about that gig because I ended up getting my nose broken at that one in the mosh pit during Toxic Waltz, so that went well.
As you do.
Yeah. It's alright. I've had my nose broken a few times. It's fine.
No, well, it seemed to fix up all right in the end. So.
It still kind of works.
Now, you posed the question earlier about the music scene dying, and I'm interested to know what you actually meant by that, because I'm not sure if this is a subject that we've touched on before, if we're approaching it from the way that I think you're going to be approaching it from.
Yes and no. I think the way I wanted to approach this one is because I've seen a few posts on the old interweb that have indicated that the entire music scene is dead or dying, that no one's going to come out to gigs. There's a lot of rubbish being spouted. The first bit of rubbish I've seen is this vaccine passport, which obviously isn't in law. It hasn't been implemented, but some people are using that as an excuse not to go to gigs because they haven't got a vaccine passport. Well, I can tell you this, you don't need one because they don't exist. It's not happening. It was shelved not long after they talked about it. Whether or not they bring it in, I don't know. But at the moment, it's off the table. So let's get that one out of the way. No, there are no vaccine passports. The second one is everyone's got to be seated. Again, no, that's only...
No, that's not the case.
Yeah, that's only for the first gig that we're doing back in Ipswich coming up. But the rest of it, post that, is all standing up. So there was none of this nonsense about being seated the whole time. But the reason why I thought this would be a good one to address is because obviously a lot of people are talking the scene down again. It didn't take very long for people to start jumping on it and saying it was all over. We've not had a gig back yet and people were saying it's dead. A lot of bands have called it quits during the lockdown, but maybe they didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty good excuse, really, doesn't it? If you're thinking about calling it quits anyway, to be like, the virus has claimed us, we're not going to be able to carry on anymore.
Well, you might find, and it's not unreasonable, you might find when you've got your time to yourself, actually, I don't like getting into a car every weekend after working hard for a week at work, driving to some town, sometimes playing to a small crowd or no crowd, getting sweaty, getting arse ache from here, there and everywhere. You might not like that, and there's certain bits I don't miss. I certainly don't miss having to lug gear about or the threat of actually having no one to play to, especially when you travel.
That's something I don't miss either.
Yeah, you travel,
especially the gear part.
3 hours or 4 hours sometimes, and then you turn up and there's no one there. It's absolutely devastating. We can all do it, and we're all big boys, and we can, take it. But it's not a fun experience. That's something you don't miss. Sometimes you get people who work at the venue owners who are very awkward and not helpful to the bands, who are almost obstructive to you being there, and will fuck you about as you're trying to load in, or offer parking or stuff like that. You don't miss that. And obviously then you get sound people and stage techs who are also equally problematic at times, where they don't want to be there either, and they're just looking to cause a row with you. So those are aspects you don't miss, that if you've got downtime, you might say, you know what, I don't want that kind of stress in my life. And that's fair enough.
Yeah,
because
that does make sense.
Not everyone wants to, but the scene isn't dying. We've got an opportunity now to really bring this thing back. And fortunately, as I've said in previous weeks with our advertising for these gigs, we're getting hundreds and hundreds of people who interact with this stuff. This is looking reasonably good. From my perspective, a lot of people were talking the Coda show up. Ipswich is sold out, or give or take sold out. So I don't understand where this idea that the scene's dead. I think some bands have maybe struggled to get booked because they haven't put the groundwork in.
Yeah.
So they're making the assumption the scene's dead. But if you're in a band and you can't get gigs, you've just got to start asking and communicating and talking to bands and people who are linked into what your scene is or what you're trying to play. Because a lot of people are not very good at that. They'll start a Facebook page, they'll release a single, and then that's as much effort as it goes into it. You've got to be on it.
They think that the gigs will come to them because of that single release. And
it does. The gigs will come to you once you're more established. We don't have to particularly beg for gigs, but people come to us and go, look, we've got this lineup. We've got a lot of interest in us, funny enough, from the new wave of British heavy metal, because those guys and those bands are looking to make a big comeback this year, and they're doing a lot of gigs. And obviously, we're heavily associated with that scene, even though we're not a Nawabban band. Because we're kind of tied in with that. We're kind of the first people they ask to jump on if they need someone to support. So, and while we're just about to do a new album, we've been out of live playing shape for about a year now, so we need to get back on it. So this is a huge benefit to us to play with established bands who have their own audience for this Nawabban thing. And there is a lot of these gigs going on. Most of the ones we've booked on are Nawabban events. How many times can you say Nawabban in a minute? Well, I think I'm just about to break that. That Guinness World Record of Nawabban. If you say it enough times, Tony Iommi shows up and slaps you in the face because he's not a Nawabban guitar player. And Judas Priest isn't a Nawabban band either, by the way, folks. So, what was I going with this? Anyway, we're tied into something, so we get offers. And we've got a few other offers coming in. I just need to obviously speak to the guys about what those are, or I'm waiting for an email or a phone call to come in. So it's all picking up, and it's all positive. I just think maybe the negativity is being brewed by people who are maybe not getting gigs and are now again putting out the whole thing like the scene's dead. I know it's been a tough year and how long it has been now since we've been locked down, but it's going to come back. Don't be disheartened. Don't listen to the rumours about, when you go to a gig, you're going to be stuck in a corner and surrounded by polystyrene. You're going to be able to enjoy the show. So come out, support it. It's going to be fun. It's happening.
Just put it this way: if you don't come out and just have a good time with it, because Rage is right. None of the things that are being thrown around are the case at all. So just come out and enjoy it. Otherwise, well, this kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that the UK music scene will die.
We don't want.
If you don't just come out. So
if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And these venues are desperate to get people out. Certainly,
they really are. Yeah.
The music room in Ipswich needed a little extra funding, which I think it may well have. They've done a crowd giving or whatever the fuck they are. I posted it on the Kaine page trying to. I did have one bit of, and I did say to the person, if you've got this type of concern, you need to say it to the venue and not get angry at us. So it's obviously another local musician has seen our Coda show and seen that the bands on the show are not being paid directly by the venue. The venue's taking donations at the bar, and that's fine.
That seems fine.
Yeah, it happens at Coda. That's how they do things. But this person's saying, you shouldn't be playing for free because that's detrimental to everyone else. But I've got some news for everyone. Bands playing for free is not the reason you're not getting paid to do gigs. That is not the reason. If you want to be paid to do gigs, you have to be a draw. You have to be a act that can bring people through the door for a venue, so that you get booked and you can take a cut of the income coming in. Now, you can, if you believe you are a draw and you're not getting booked, well, you can rent a venue out and do it yourself. You can be the promoter, you can do the advertising, and you take all of the profit if there is any.
As you've done many times.
Yeah. But if you're not able to bring people into a gig, you can't really expect payment, because at the end of the day, you know, why would a venue give you money to turn up and bring no one? You know, they're a business as well. They might chuck you some petrol money, which is fair enough, but £20 between 4 people isn't, you know, it's not life changing. You know, at the end of the day, you may as well not have the money. It's not like a big deal. But if you're in a position where you think, okay, I'm bringing people to a venue, I deserve some pay. And, you know, in some cases in the past, we've done a bar split. We've done stuff on the doors. If we believe we're going to draw and we can actually make the event work financially for us, then that's how we do it. In this case, we actually owed Coda a show anyway, because we had to cancel one of their shows due to the fact we were playing the Arts Centre, and the Arts Centre had kindly asked us not to play both, which we agreed to. We agreed to the Arts Centre show first, so we said fine, we'll not play the Coda show. So I actually owe Coda a show anyway. So I'm not going to go begging for money, because that's my bad. We booked 2 culture shows. The Arts Centre weren't happy, but this is, you know, we're happy to make up with this. We're not going to start begging Coda for money on that basis. But yeah, the premise is of the idea that because bands play for free, and when you start up as a band, you have to play for free, because no bugger's going to book a band that brings no one to a show that's probably not great because they haven't played gigs before. You're going to have to.
It's too much of a risk, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a waste of time for them, because they're not going to get a justifiable crowd in to afford to justify them being paid. But equally, if you're a brand new band, you need to learn how to play live. It's all very well doing it in the rehearsal room or doing it at home in front of a computer screen when you're playing along to a
live's a very different beast. Even if you know you do play live in your rehearsal room, that's still not the same as playing live on stage.
No, you can't actually buy the experience that you get from playing live. I'm not saying, oh, you're playing for the exposure, ha ha ha. No, well, that's a bit shit. But equally, if I hadn't have played the 300 odd gigs I'd played at this point, I would not anywhere be as good as I am at my level, you know. So it means that when people do pay to see me, they're getting a much better product as a result. It's like anything in life. Considering training or an apprenticeship, you have to pay your dues a bit and do some shit things before you can climb the ladder. So yeah, that's something I just thought I'd point out. It's not our fault or anybody else's fault that you're not getting paid to do music. And there was a time where we got blamed for bands not getting paid throughout the whole country. They were saying, oh, it's because Kaine play for free everywhere, which wasn't entirely true.
No.
But yeah, it's just a bit silly.
I kind of feel like the way that Coda do it, bands do get paid a fair amount anyway, because if you're a fan of the music, you are either going to put a tip in the tip jar or go straight over to the merch table and buy some merch. You know, if you like that music, then you should be allowing the bands to make some money off you. You're just doing it in a more direct way.
Yeah, and what was frustrating about when the lockdown came in, obviously we'd started to pick up some traction. We were doing bigger venues, and obviously our merch stand was doing very well. So we'd started to it all started to come together.
It really started to come together, didn't it? Yeah.
And then we had
Thanks,
the
COVID.
rug pulled from us again. So it's kind of like starting over in the sense that we're doing it now. But yeah, people will generally buy merch if they like the band, and that's where most of your money is anyway.
Yeah.
Your 20, 30 quid you might get for petrol. You can sell 5 CDs, make 50 quid, and a t-shirt on top, and at the end of the night you might make 150 quid if you've been good and people like what you're doing. And again, if you're turning up with your merch and you're playing and no one's buying it and you've got a full room, you need to question how you're sort of selling it, really. Is it how you're playing live? Well, if it's not that, then are you just sat at the merch stand with a phone in front of you? Are you not engaging with anyone?
Do they even know that you've got merch? Because the amount of bands that I've seen that just haven't mentioned it at all and haven't put it out on a table or anything.
Yeah.
They'll just... I've approached several bands and said, have you got any merch? And they're like, yeah, we've got loads. Do you fancy coming and guessing some? And I'm like, I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't have asked you.
It's like some dodgy deal, isn't it? They invite you around
Yeah.
the back of the van and they pull the box out. Oh, do you fancy one of these? Oh, yeah, I'll give us one of those EPs, mate.
I'm pretty
like,
sure the first Kaine t-shirt I bought off Chris in the B2 toilets.
Okay, that's a story I didn't know, but that's quite
Nice.
a step. Yeah, we don't typically sell things in toilets, might I add, to anyone who thinks that's a normal way of us doing business. Although, if you do want to buy from me in the toilet, I can sell you merch in the toilet, but it's not it's not my preference.
It's not the stall we'd rather you visit.
Oh. Especially given some of the toilet talk that we've had in previous episodes, what goes on inside venue toilets.
They'll sell you something.
Yeah, batteries. Anthony pointed out that I didn't get to the end of that story.
No, you didn't tell the best bit.
Where the guy says, so going back a couple of weeks, I mentioned that I'd convinced this guy to smoke a Duracell or something. And his wife was obviously arguing with him that it wasn't a good idea to smoke the battery. In this case, his wife was really right. Anyway, one of his reasonings for being able to smoke this battery and earn that $1,000 fee for doing so was that he had smoked worse than the battery. So therefore, it was fine.
I think when you get to the point where you are agreeing to smoke a battery, that goes without saying. You've absolutely smoked worse than that.
It's the fact he just shrugged his shoulders, looked at his wife, and went, "I've smoked worse." As if what could you possibly smoke worse than a Duracell battery? You absolute maniac.
I'm surprised you didn't ask him.
I just moved on. I think at that stage, I can imagine this guy's just rolling his cigars in fucking asbestos or something. I can't think of what was worse than the battery. Just Jesus. Oh, these people are crazy. So the last thing, as we're talking about, obviously, the coming back to the scene, I think it will be a really positive experience. I think the scene isn't dying. It's going to come back. How big it comes back, we don't know. But, you look at Twisted Illusion just last week. They've got into Classic Rock magazine.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. It's not, obviously, as well as, you think the scene is dead. Well, Twisted Illusion just got an article in Classic Rock magazine, and Massive Wagons have been announced to play Download next year.
Yeah.
Hardly Dead.
Yeah, and they did that through playing mostly underground events to begin with.
Yep, they did.
And I'm going to guess that sometimes even for free, for those who think playing for free is the end of the world, because it ain't. And those who think that they're not getting paid because other people work for free. That's like, to think of that in comparison, that's like a CEO who's earning $200,000 a year complaining that he's not making $300,000 a year because people work for minimum wage elsewhere. That's like, no, that's not how this works.
But yeah, that's, I don't know.
I see the whole bands being concerned that there's not going to be a music scene in quite a similar way to how, in order to keep a tree growing properly, every now and then you have to give it a bit of a prune. You have to chop a little bit off. You have to sometimes cut back quite a bit in order to make sure that it's growing in a healthy way and that it does what it needs to do.
Yeah, you need to have new bands coming in who bring new fans along to shows, and they need to connect into what existing bands are doing, and some bands have to move on if they don't want to do it anymore and don't have the passion for it. So you're absolutely right. There needs to be a constant renewal of things to make the whole thing work. And we've mentioned that in the Legacy Band episode. You need to have... Legacy bands have their place, but you also need to have new people coming in.
You need room for the new guys to come and kick all sorts of new arse.
Yeah. I mean, what we need is a multi-million-pound injection into specifically me, and I'll fix the rest of it. But
it's straight in your veins.
Yeah, give me the money straight to my veins.
Just injecting the money straight in there.
I can give up work and have a nice, easy life then. I kid. I love working. Yeah. So that's basically it from me on that. It's, the scene isn't dead. I think there's a lot of negativity because maybe someone's band isn't doing well, and that then spreads the rumours that, it's all shit, but it's not. It really ain't.
Do you think as well that, like venue closures, due to COVID and other things, even before the pandemic, we were obviously having a lot of venues closed down for different reasons. Do you think that kind of helps perpetuate the argument as well?
Yeah, it does. But again, a lot of these venues close because when they run events, and specifically music venues, they're absolutely terrible at promoting them. They just do a Facebook event page, which they often don't invite anyone to. No one sees. They don't run any ads. They don't do any targeted marketing. And then no one shows up. And it's like, what's happened? Why aren't people coming to our gigs? It's because you're doing no work.
Well, the thing is as well is that a lot of the times, as well, I'm not saying it's all the venues, because there have been some venues that have shut down that were actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
But, a lot of the places weren't necessarily the nicest of places to show up for a gig in the first place, which does automatically put them on a back foot. But that means, again, like you said, they've got to put more legwork into actually promoting and trying to get a fucker out to the gig.
Yeah, so there's a number of factors, isn't there? There's like the state of the venue, whether it looks like a tip and it's covered in shit, literally.
And the floor is, you basically take one step and you're stuck.
Yeah, and if they've got clientele who knock about who are maybe, on drugs or, drunken and disorderly to a level that's dangerous, which we have seen in the past, and maybe a threat to women as well.
Times.
Yeah, which you have to keep an eye on. You really do, because the people of all backgrounds and whatever else are coming to gigs. You have to make sure that everyone's safe, and some venues just don't keep a good tab on these people.
That's the important thing, isn't it? If you're not making sure that the other people that are using your venue are safe, then they're not going to want to come back, are they?
They don't come back. They go there once. Sometimes they go there for 10, 20 minutes, take a look around.
Realising they're having a shit night and then leave.
Yeah, especially if there's... there is a problem with, a certain group of people who will frequent music venues, or pubs in particular, who are very lewd with young women, and to the point where they're threatening.
Yeah, that's a real problem in smaller venues especially.
And it puts off, young women from coming along to our shows as well. So it's one of those things where, if they haven't cleaned the venue, have not, made sure the gig goers are safe. If the sound is terrible, they've not invested in a good PA or desk, or even a sound man. The lighting,
some cases.
Yeah, nothing. The lighting's poor. That makes it hard for the musicians to play there. So the show that the musicians are able to deliver is inferior. So the sound and lighting hasn't been looked after. And then on top of that, they haven't done any promo. They think Facebook's the be-all and end-all, even though no one under 30 uses bloody Facebook anymore. So they're stuck, and those types of venues are the ones that tend to go under because they haven't moved on. They've not taken advantage of the tools in front of them. They've not even paired up with a local promoter who can do that if they can't, or even contacted their local bands, or even made the people that do go to the venues aware if there's any events going on. It seems like the most basic shit. It really seems like simple stuff, but they just can't do it for whatever reason, and they tend to go under. But as Liam says, it creates this perception that they're all like it and they're all going under, which isn't true.
That's not true at all.
But the weaker ones are starting to disappear, which I suppose in some ways is sad, but in other ways, well, it gives the opportunity for the ones who are doing the right things
to really kind of step up their game, as it were.
Yeah, and enable, certainly younger bands who are just starting out, somewhere to play and actually grow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's definitely right.
And I think that's probably more important than giving these older places a place to sort of latch onto.
I remember the old punk venues that we sometimes used to get booked at, and obviously punk has always had this very DIY attitude to music promotion and the gigs. Yeah. And some of these, I think that Club Evolution was one of them. It was a punk promoter who put that on. That's the case where the venue is a shithole, where the people who attend the gig are at risk of other, predatory people, and not just, the obvious thing with men acting in an inappropriate way to women, but at the same time, there are people who are looking to just cause fights.
Yeah.
I remember playing a gig in Southampton maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and I came out of the venue, and the venue's actually right. It's the Firehouse in Southampton. There's no real problem with that. But I'd come out of the venue, and somebody was being refused entry by the bouncers. So this is where a venue was actually doing their job, but he was there and he was being a problem. I've got my amp in one hand, and he decided to kick it. In my other hand, I got my guitar, and I just went, "Look, mate, I'm coming back for you in about 5 minutes." And he's obviously all game for a fight. So I go back to the van. I chuck it in the van. I go back there. Well, fortunately, because the venue were on it shit hot, he was already being rounded up into the back of the police van by the time I got back there.
Oh, fantastic. That's huge.
But that's an example of where, people are trying to start fights and problems. The railway in Ipswich had a lot of that back in the day, where you get these sort of, drug dealers or whatever, and they'd be about and they would start looking for trouble.
Ipswich used to be horrendous after a gig.
Yeah, it's still not great.
It's still not perfect, but at least now, I think, in my experience anyway, the venues are more aware of it, and they're putting things in place like a sensible curfew, or making sure that they've got adequate sort of bouncers and stuff.
Yeah, well, there was the tragic case of the fella who left the gig a year or so ago and was killed in Ipswich. Obviously, we know his brother, who's involved with the music scene, and they had a very light sentence because the guy was 17. I think he got done for 2 years in the end, which is absolutely terrible.
That's horrific.
For murder, yeah. So Ipswich is, it needs to clean up its act a bit, really. As a town in that respect, but as you say, the venues.
Well, part of the problem is that they're on the county drug lines, so there's a lot of crime that passes through without them really knowing who's responsible.
Yeah, it's a problem. But as you say, the venues, like the smokehouse, that you don't get any problem once you're in the venue. They look after it. That's a clean venue, and obviously we're playing the music room, and I'm sure that will be absolutely safe as well.
Yeah,
it's what happens outside of it which is different there. But yeah, it's just a point of, the venues have to be hot on troubled people. They might buy some drinks, but they're usually pissed before they get there, so you can usually tell if they're going to be an issue. And
it's illegal to sell alcohol to people that are already obviously steaming anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, I remember the guy that you invited to the B2 gig who was in there for all of 10 seconds.
What, that random bloke that I got a free taxi ride with?
He was in the venue all of 10 seconds and then he was kicked out. I see him charge in. He's jumping around like a mad person. The venue's seen him and he's just been carted off. And that's it. We didn't see him again.
I didn't see this.
It's fucking hilarious.
I didn't see this, and I wish I did.
Was that Crisis lineup, or was that?
I don't know. I think it was this lineup. I seem to remember it being this lineup. He was in and he was out.
Yeah, because I'd spent the afternoon in the pub, and this random bloke had got talking to me, and he'd told me he was off to Norwich. So I was like, "Do you mind if I hop in your taxi?" And then I managed to convince him to come all the way to the Brickmakers.
Jesus. Well, wow. He jumped in. He went mental. He went absolutely fucking ballistic.
Yeah, he was loving it.
And he was instantly just tracked out.
I think I sold him a CD before he got kicked out as well.
Well, so you made a tenner out of him and he got kicked out of the venue. Well,
winner.
Good times. Well, he had a great time. Not for very long, but he had a great time for the 20 seconds he was able to enjoy himself.
Well, hopefully he remembers it.
Yeah, I don't know if he does. I'm actually woke up with a bit of a headache.
I don't think he does. He probably woke up and looked just like, where the fuck did I get this CD from?
Yep.
A lot of people Alex has had interactions with will have that same conversation with themselves.
And then you've got people like Matt Dew that will wake up every time they go to a Kaine gig with another fucking CD.
I've had to exchange them with Matt because he's got I've got this one, and I'm like, okay, here's a new one, just change it, and I'll So he's constantly having to trade his old ones that you've sold him twice over with me for the latest release. But bless him, he does spend, so we can't complain. But he doesn't always know what he's bought until he wakes up in the morning.
I mean, that's not my fault.
Well, it partly is. You know,
I mean,
you're
you're hardly telling him. Wait a minute, don't you already have this?
I do normally ask him. That's the best part. Is generally speaking, I will be like, "Are you sure you've not got this one already?" Oh, I want it.
Yeah, he buys it. That drinking horn is legendary. The amount of places I've seen that where it shouldn't be. It's been in the trough in toilets. I've seen it just there.
Oh, don't tell me that. I'm drunk from that horn.
You've had I would never go near that. That's a source of many disgusting diseases. I've seen that thing in all kinds of, like, you know, even Keir Starmer's had a look at that and gone, you know what, I don't fancy a drink out of that. This is disgusting.
It's a bit much for him, is it?
Yeah. He's
Too
like,
much for old Keir.
Keir doesn't like it. He had hair. He had coloured hair before. What am I saying? He had hair.
He still does, doesn't he?
Yes, he still does.
I was going to say he had colour in his hair before he drank out of that thing, and then it's got completely grey as a result. Oh, Keir. You shouldn't go out drinking with Matt Jew, should you, after nights of Ludo, worth of Ludo. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to contribute on that, unless you guys have any sort of in-depth insights other than what I've come up with.
I think we've covered the basics, really.
Yeah, I think we've covered it pretty adequately. Just obviously the scene isn't dead. Just because venues are shutting doesn't mean that the scene is dying. Just because you can't find a gig doesn't mean that the scene is dying. Just got to go and ask around and just look at what Twisted Illusion have managed to achieve in getting their... I think it was a full-page article, wasn't it, in Classic Rock?
Yeah, it was a full-page spread.
Which is fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
So, if you're a local band, just look at that and realise that, no, you can get that still.
Matt's been working bloody hard over the years to get to that point. It's not,
and he
something
really has,
that's just
yeah,
fallen in his lap. He's absolutely clawed his way up there.
Yeah, just pop.
I asked for a double page spread in Classic Rock, and they actually managed to fax me. I don't even have a fax machine, but they just faxed me a turd. That was their response to having Kaine in there. So yeah, it didn't go so well for us.
I'd like to think that's real.
I'd like to think that's real as well.
Anyway, you have one thing that we've not touched on, which is the EP. The EP is no longer 2 disc. I was able to get it all on 1 disc, which saves money. The CDs have been printed. They're with me. We'll hopefully be signing them this weekend, so I apologise to my bandmates in advance because they love having to sit there and sign all the shit. 100 copies only. 50 will be available without T-shirts. 50 T-shirts will be printed, and once they're gone, they're gone. The T-shirts I'm waiting on, and there's a new patch coming with them, which is separate. I got offered a deal on a patch, and I went, fuck it, we're having another patch. So that's coming out, and we'll be selling over for £2 each patch, and again limited to about 50 of those. So,
and on that note, if you'd
Didn't know
like
there
to
was a patch
support
coming.
Kaine a little bit further, you can always subscribe to the Patreon as well, which is patreon.com/Kaine_metal, and it goes from as little as £1.
Yep, £1 or £3. And to note on that, we've had a couple of people, I say a couple, quite a few people have dropped out in recent weeks of Patreon, which might be due to obviously financial problems or whatever else. But just to remind people that the new T-shirt and patch will be done later this year. So if you're waiting for it, you're gonna get it. We always send out the stuff we commit to, and we're going to have a new EP. And I suppose the new song that we're writing at the moment will end up on that in some shape or form. So it's all coming. So don't stop paying us for the time being, because it's not coming immediately. It takes a while to put these things together and us to gather the resources to be able to do it. So just hang in there.
See you next week, guys.
See you next week, lads.